Warhammer Online, the home of wargaming.
Hello and welcome to another Monday Musing. I think this is like Monday Musing 62, believe it or not. You know, if you were to listen to all of the Monday Musings in one go, it would take approximately 62 hours. Fact of the day. Okay, welcome. Today's show is all about the news coming out of GAMA show, the trade show. And we're also going to be having a look at the breaking news around Battletome Blades of Khorne as well. So a little bit of 40k, a little bit of Necromunda, a little bit of Blood Bowl, a little bit of Age of Sigmar, a lot of waffle. So come along, join me. Any comments in the chat? That would be fantastic. Comments, questions, don't forget to @Wargamer Online if you want to get my attention, because I can't always catch all of the different questions in the chat. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if sound and all the rest of the nonsense is working. And if that's the case, on with the show. It's just me tonight as well. So I did reach out, but I think everyone's a bit busy. Everyone's getting some hobby done. I've just left a chat room full of hobbyists who are all knuckling down and getting on with their doubles tournament armies. So Sam is out there currently working on his, I think I'm going to say secret project, because I don't think he's posted it anywhere, so I'm not going to give it away. That's for Sam to give it away. But he's working on a project for the tournament, and along with Luke. I think even Mike's talking about possibly going to the tournament as well, which wouldn't that be awesome? So if you want to know what I'm talking about the Age of Sigmar doubles tournament at the end of June. I'm currently working on my Idoneth Deepkin. Jack is absolutely nailing out his Marathi and Daughters of Cain. It's going to be a fun show. Right, okay. Needless to say, on with the show. So quick hello to people in the chat, and then we will move on. So we've got Frank Storm saying hello, and Stuart Noble, who helped me out very, very early on this evening with the old classic chat test. I don't even know why I test it anymore, because we don't bring the chat up on screen. It used to be back in the day we had to bring the chat up on screen for everybody to see it once it was finished, but now you can kind of play the chat back as it goes. So I don't know, old habits die hard. Elster Nation is saying hello from Germany. Heaven knows what Elster Nation's doing in Germany. Maybe he's on holiday, I don't know. But hey, thanks for dialing in. Pop over and say, oh wait, no, Ralph's in France, so that's not going to work. Patrick, I'm sure, is still in Germany. Frank Storm says hello. Martin Dick says hey hey. Dave Dog says hi. Looks like Slanesh, Keeper of Secrets, is coming. Well, that's pretty cool. Furious George says good morning people. Slanesh are definitely going to get some amazing releases, let's face it. David White, hi everyone, I caught a live one. Hello David and welcome. Felhate says hi, and Stuart Noble saying good evening again. There you go, we are all caught up with the chat. Oh, Ralph says evening. Hello Ralph, how are you, mate? Okay, well, what's been going on? I kind of almost want to start with the funnest thing that I've seen out of the Warhammer community for a long time. So, as you know, you should know by now, new Khorne models are coming. They've also said that, I'm pretty certain in the link as well, that the Blades of Khorne is going to be the next release for pre-order this weekend. So that's bloody exciting news, as Chapter Master Valrak would say. Blood for the blood god. Business for the week, says Elston. Let's have a look at the Skull Taker, because I had a good old giggle about this on Games Workshop, showing off their sense of humour again. The most Warhammer model ever. And I really like what they went on to do is, I mean, besides showing what a beautiful model it is, if I just bring this up, just look at the insane detail on that model. It's absolutely amazing. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If you give me a second, because I've just noticed I've got a wee bit of a misalignment. So let's do that, look. There we go. We can all see it now, rather than me just selfishly looking at it. So if we take a quick look at this, skulls, that literally is the Slayer sword from the Golden Demon entries, which is so cool. There's horns, there's flaming blood. It's just an amazing model. And by the way, for the studio guys to have painted it, this is absolutely stunning. I love this Khorne symbol on the inside of the cloak there. which has got some beautiful blend work and highlight work on. So, my goodness me, yes, what can I say about that model other than it's absolutely incredible. But they do go on to rate it from hero posiness. So starting with the basics, you know, you find a rock, you put your foot on it. There's so many models like that. From the I'm working on my soul render at the moment. Is that going to show on camera? And of course he's got his, of course it's not going to show, that's way too dark, but he's got his foot on a rock. You've got to find a rock. This is, you know, an absolute basic. If you're going to stand on anything, a rock, a head, a boulder, a dead marine, all of these things are good. But you know, when we get ourselves along to the Skull Taker, we've got the wielding of the Slayer Sword, 10 out of 10. It's just absolutely amazing that they've brought an icon from Games Workshop onto a model. Skull density, didn't get this until you scroll down, because yeah, you know, as we know, the this huge Lord of what was that called? The Lord of something or other. I can't remember now. It wasn't the Khorne Lord of Skulls, was it? Anyway, whatever this ridiculous vehicle was called, absolutely covered in skulls. That's nothing. Look at how many skulls are attached to this guy's cloak on the outside, which I absolutely love it. And I love all the different injuries as well. You know, someone who's just got smacked right in the centre of his forehead, a couple of scratches. You know, some are even numbered, aren't they? Love it, love it. Absolutely fantastic. So yes, the most Warhammer model ever. What do you guys think to it, really? Before I move on, because you know that's only a little bit of what's hinted for Khorne, but for me it's an absolutely stunning model. I love all this muscle work on the legs, absolutely amazing. Goodness me. Let's have a quick catch up with the chat before we move on. David Ellis saying, "Sup Pete's, Thord and Lim is in there saying good evening. Blood Bowl hard mode for the win." Oh my goodness me. So they're bringing back hard mode, are they? Roa says hey all. Martin Dix, but it's not squats to be honest. Furious George, pro tip, bolt a rock to the bottom of your boot. Always have a rock on hand or underfoot to stand on. That's actually a good idea. You could kind of do that, you know, when they do the cosplay. You could have just a rock you know, permanently tied to the bottom of one shoe, couldn't you? So every time you stop to take photos, you're in the right pose. Chapter Master Valrak's looking to do Khorne. I'm not surprised. He talked about it, didn't he? He's not too big on the heresy front, is he? But you know, I did hear him talk about it. Lord of Skulls, is that what it was called? It must have been. I think they even mentioned it on the article anyway. Still. Anyway, exciting stuff. And of course, coming soon, we've got Khorne models as well, with the Battletome Blades of Khorne. I think this, for me, is going to be quite a pivotal moment to see what this Battletome is like. Two reasons. One, as we know, there's a whole bunch of Battletomes going to hit this year. And in the images we saw that sort of, you know, Battletomes from each Grand Alliance, and in the imagery we saw, you know, Fire Slayers. There's talk of Caradon Overlords needing an overhaul. You know, so some of these older codex, older Battletomes, a good way of distinguishing between the two is just check your Battletome for the colour of the logo. If you've got the old yellow logo, then you're pretty much, as far as Games Workshop are concerned, out there in the history of Age of Sigmar. And if you've got the nice gold logo, there's a good chance you're pretty much up and running with the latest sort of meta on the armies. So why am I interested in Blades of Khorne? We know it's going to be one of the releases. Blades of Khorne already exist in a fairly well established format, and they haven't done very well at all. So I want to see what happens when this Battletome comes out. Is it going to be like what the Flesh Eater Courts players experienced, which was, you know, from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile, in terms of how impressive that faction got? That I still raise questions around the idea of being able to take that great big giant beastie as battle line, but that's another story. So yeah, we saw Flesh Eater Courts get a complete reinvention and drive forward, and I think if we see something similar for Khorne and Chaos within the Age of Sigmar realms. It's going to be an interesting time for the rest of us, waiting for our updated battle tomes. And you know, I'm looking at you, Caradron Overlord players. I'm looking at you, Fireslayer players, and I know that Fireslayers kind of got updated, but they were mixed all over the place. So we shall see. We shall see. But I haven't, you know, seen the Blades of Khorne Battletome yet. It looks like, you know, pretty cool. You've got, of course, the you know, the I'm going to say endless spells, but you know, you've got the endless spells for Khorne that was referenced in one of the previous leaks that I think came out of one of the toy festivals, wasn't it? One of the toy shows in the US, I think, where these were first leaked. So yeah, yeah, I've discussed this with Jack. Endless spells for Khorne. You know, it'll be alright, won't it? So they're summoned to battle by the Slaughter Priests. Each have a devastating impact on the game. Hexgorga Skulls, for example, cause wizards to forget spells entirely, whilst the Rafax is a deadly source of damage. Unlike endless spells, you can't dispel by wizards, making them dangerous for foes who rely on magic, just as Khorne intended. So this is interesting. You can summon them to the table. Unlike endless spells, they can't be dispelled, because they are not endless spells, but they are kind of endless spells. And you know, there's a mechanic in there for shutting magic down. You know, I think the axe is going to be one of those, a bit like the pendulum, just slams across the table, dishing out damage at anything in its path. And I'm not quite sure what the skulls are going to be, because it's the Rafax that looks like the pendulum. Oh, it's the skulls that make wizards forget their magic, so who knows what the symbol's going to be about. It's probably in there, isn't it? Some kind of blessing, no doubt, because that's what usually you get, don't you? Something that shuts something down, something that causes a bunch of damage, and something that acts as a bit of a boon. And that seems to be the format for the not endless spells. But either way, I like them. I think they're great looking models. So pretty exciting stuff. We've got the Bloodmaster. So this is pretty cool looking model. I love this thing on the horns here. I love this. You know, okay, my head's too spiky to wear a crown, but you know, I've got that just drop on top of the horns. Job done. Kind of a crown. Pretty happy. You're just stunning looking models. It's just you run out of words, don't you, to describe Games Workshop model releases. Really, the latest set of the Black Legion models, and I think the sculptor for that's Darren Latham, who was mentioned on one of the Voxcasts. That guy is just ridiculously talented. Every model he touched turns to gold, basically. But you know, we're also seeing a terrain piece. And then obviously you know, familiar from the box, you know, from the recent army box, we're seeing the flesh hounds as well. So there you go. And then, you know, all is not lost for those of you who play Warhammer 40k. This isn't just about Age of Sigmar. You know, these Khorne releases will be usable within you know, the Warhammer 40k. You will see them no doubt play a role in Vigilus as well. So interesting times, beautiful models. Yeah, so what does that all mean? Like I say, really, I think unless you're a massive Khorne fan, you know, in which case you're going to be super happy. If you're not, it just gets me raising questions about what can we expect for let's start with every faction with an old battle tome. What can we expect? Are we going to see a similar thing? Piece of terrain, endless spells. So let's take Fire Slayers, because now we've seen a mechanic where endless spells have been given to an army without magic. Fire Slayers. Does that mean we get a piece of terrain, some kind of volcanic magma hole? Maybe that's a way of sort of calming down the lava tunnel. So we'll see something similar to the Gnaw hole, where you're actually limited to a location on the table rather than pop up anywhere. Who knows? That may well be the terrain piece. There could be something else, explosive lava volcano mountain, something. Who knows? Then you've got the endless spells. You know, what can Fire Slayers do? Well, maybe it's something along the lines of the Spirit of Grimnir. You know, that's what it's all about. So maybe these are all kind of Urgold you know, massive Urgold runes and symbols or something that are brought about by the smiters, and that carries a bunch of inherent power with it as well. Who knows? Who knows? Interestingly enough, on the recent leaks that they do, and I can't remember the name of them now, the one that Games Workshop officially leak images out, the only thing that's actually visible is a piece of is the lid of a jewelry box chest from the Idoneth Deepkin range. So we've got a terrain piece for the Idoneth Deepkin in the format of the boat. So the question is, are we going to be seeing again endless spells for Idoneth Deepkin, which is the other side of this debate, really, isn't it? You know, Idoneth Deepkin is far from needing a fresh Battletome. You know, I still think they're very, very strong. We're seeing that in the tournament list. The army's really interesting, but it does sit outside of the norm with the absence of endless spells. What I'm going to do before we move on to the GAMA breaking news, let's have a look at the chat, and while I'm chatting away as well, what I might try and do is have a look and see if I can find that little hint of what's coming soon. But let's just check what's in the chat. Dave says that Khorne demon with a sword looks like he has a melting ice cream cone on his head. Oh, bless. That seems a bit unnecessarily harsh, but he may well look like he's got a melting ice cream cone. Oh no, you spoiled it for me now. That's like when someone posted up that picture of Abaddon, where someone was pressing the button on the back of his back, and it was just with the meme Abadoff, which had me chuckling for about 4 hours, and then it was immediately followed by both Abaddon and Gilliman playing tennis with each other as well. You know what? It doesn't matter how cool the model is, somebody's going to find something, aren't they? David says, just randomly announcing I'm on Warhammer TV twice in May, on the 3rd as it's a rematch against the Necrons, and the 22nd it's AOS, just building a Slaves to Darkness, Maggot King's rules for Army to that. Awesome stuff, David. We'll look out for you on that, man. They should do releases for other gods that match Khorne's skull thing. Feathers for Zeech, tentacles for Nurgle, and something for Slanesh. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Feathers for Zeech. Yeah, that would work. Some kind of birdie craziness, some kind of changing nonsense. Tentacles for Nurgles. Oh, as endless spells, of course. Yeah, you do want something crazy, don't you? Dave says, are you a commission painter? Just checking. Martin Dick says, something about ogres, and I don't know where that came from. Ralph says, not to forget an updated BT Battletome for Seraphon with some nice new models, please. Well, that would go down well, wouldn't it? And Seraphon is certainly one of the older Battletomes. Would be good to see something along those lines. Oh man, just check out that model. That's ridiculously brilliant. I love it. Especially when you consider, I think that's a 60mm base, I think. I'm pretty certain it's a 60mm base. Right, okay, Frank Storm says 40k mentioned for Khorne, might get an update to Berserkers. That would be nice, wouldn't it? DJ the Lucky One joining us, and Dave says, are you the guy who painted all those Beasts of Chaos that took to the tournament? He has no fame at all, just played with Phil at Age of Sigmar's doubles. There you go. Yeah, if you want to be on Warhammer TV, I think the idea is you contact the community team and you say, hey, this is my army, I'd like to appear on Warhammer TV. And I think they're pretty much always looking for players. I dare say there is a waiting list, but I think they're looking for players. So, yeah, contact them. That's the way it's done. We were on there, myself and Sam played a game, and I would do more if I wasn't in the middle of swapping jobs right now and balancing all the channel and the rest. Otherwise, I'd be there every weekend if they'd let me. Martin Dick says, just feels they leave behind the less popular armies. Well, we'll see, won't we? I mean, this is the thing, is Seraphon, it would be nice for them to have, you know, a little bit of a refresh. And I suppose there is a balance, isn't there? You could see, say, Fireslayers maybe getting a fresh Battletome. You could see, you know what? This argument starts to actually destroy itself as I go along. I was saying, you know, Seraphon is quite an old model list, but then again, so was Flesh Eater Corps, wasn't it? You know, and what they did was add you know, a nice, super cool new character, single model, and off you go. Re-release range. So I wouldn't say Flesh Eaters were up there as a popular army. But they've certainly got a hell of a lot of love recently. Okay, not in models, but certainly in rules. Where we go. David White, hoping my Caradrons get an Ether Storm in this thing, like make manifest what the Ether Navigator can already summon, and maybe a refueling platform. That would be so cool. Yeah, or some, yeah, the terrain piece for Caradron Overlords needs to be some kind of floating platform or something, doesn't it? A refueling platform or rearming platform where, you know, if you're within 3 inches of that thing, wholly within 6 inches of it or something, you get like an extra shot or something. So it just becomes this absolute hub where they're reloading weaponry. If that gets used, you know, yeah, that would be amazing. And I will go on about it for weeks. Rumour engine, says Ralph. Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Rumour. Oh, right. Ogres for new battle tomes. Ah, Martin, right. Of course, yes. The Gutbusters. Jack is desperately hoping Gutbusters get some love because, you know, having only 3 complete Age of Sigmar armies, he desperately needs a 4th right now. So he's almost finished his Daughters of Cain. He has a complete Beastclaw Raiders. He has a complete Flesh Eater Court army. And I think we were just chatting, actually, 3,500 points of Flesh Eater Courts, 2,500 points of Beastclaw Raiders, and I think it's at about 1,800 points of Daughters, with a couple of units to finish off, which will take him up to the 200, something like that. So, yes, he's already, and if anybody's looked at the Warhammer Wargamer Online community Facebook page, they'll notice he's actually even took a slight diversion across to doing the old Free People. Right, where were we? Dave says, I'm looking at Ultramarine getting crushed by Abaddon, and I can tell GW prime their Ultramarines in white, and yet they recommend you prime in black, which is interesting. So, there you go. Yeah, give them a shout. Oh, David is saying give them a shout on the Warhammer TV and get some sweet Warhammer TV dice. There you go. Yes. Yeah, I don't get that. Mind you, then again, no, I don't get it. Although a lot of the time, I mean, bear in mind that I airbrush, so a lot of the time I will prime in black and then do a Zenithal grey to give me the tones, and even sometimes, depending on how bright I'm going, a Zenithal white. Before I then lay the base coat down, so it's sort of pre-shading, that old technique in airbrushing, which I do quite a lot of. So I mean, even if I'm hand painting the models, I tend to still do that pre-shading because I just think it helps with some of the flat colours. I think David has actually he's held it for review, so I'm going to show that. Hold on a second. So he's just sent the Warhammer TV inbox. There you go. So if you want to get on Warhammer TV, David Ellis has been kind enough to share the email address with you. So if you want to appear on it, give that email a shout. Say what an amazing person you are and what amazing armies you've got. When I did it, I basically listed all the armies I'd got above 2,000 points and said, hey, you know, happy to bring any of these. What they actually did was fire back and say, you bring what you want, which was kind of nice. So I think they're just happy for people to come along and show amazing armies. Right, where were we now? Okay, breaking news from gamers. Should we talk about this for a little bit? First and foremost, the breaking news is not the only breaking news. It's Monday the 11th. The show began at 4 PM GMT. That's when this post immediately went up. We've got 2 posts coming tomorrow night, one at 8 PM and one at midnight. I'm half tempted to do a live show at midnight tomorrow night, just as we wait for that update to come in, see if I can get one of the Motley crew to join me on a group chat or something, and we can wait around for that update to come in just to see what they say at the end of the day. Excuse me. That's terrible of me, I'm sorry. And then Wednesday the 13th is an update again at, does that say 4 AM GMT? I think it does, doesn't it? I wonder if they mean PM though. No, 9 PM on Wednesday. That really doesn't look right. Okay then, what have they told us so far? Well, good news is Kill Team Elites. I'm pretty giddy about this, to be honest, because one of the things I've wanted from Kill Team is the ability to take Wraithguard right from day one. So this is just ticking the box for me. Elites is an expansion, so it's not going to be, you don't have to put it into every game, just like you know, you do with Commanders and you also do with Arena. No doubt it will be sort of based either around specific missions or agreeing with your opponent, essentially. But this means you can bring Terminators, Crisis Battle Suits, etc. Every faction has a new unit. So this is Vanguard Space Marines from Shadowspear, much requested editions such as Mandrakes, Striking Scorpions. Yes. We've even gone and added a whole new faction of Adaptus Custodes. Custodes in Kill Team, man. That's going to be mental. We're making it easy to add elites to your Kill Team roster with a host of boxed expansions like previous sets. So they're doing these very cool little sets. We've got 2 Ripper Crew, and we've got the Fractal Blades. So that looks like orcs, but in particular the loot. Is it? It's not looters, is it? Somebody tell me who those things are. But that's the cool pirate-like orcs, isn't it? And then you've got Thousand Sun Terminators, maybe? Or just Thousand Suns. No doubt there's a picture down there. Oh my goodness, that is actually the Terminators, isn't it? Youch. I tell you what, though, I so want to get my Vanguard done now. Right, that's it. I'm going to stop the show and just start building Vanguard. Ah, great stuff. This is it. This is my excuse to finally start on my Ultramarines. So, Kill Team Elites. Good news, bad news. It's got to be good news, hasn't it? As soon as you start, let's have a look at where we went from Kill Team with a basic release where you had to use basic troops and all those kind of things, and it was, you know, very much about a campaign and those, you know, those characters becoming slightly better than their standard stat line. They introduced Commanders, which enabled you to kind of power up the game and put a leader amongst that unit. We moved into Arena, where you're seeing a stripped down, almost semi-board game feel to it, which had, you know, specific rules to the boards aimed at the competitive zone. So this is sort of Kill Team tournaments, and again, the whole drive is to kind of make the game, I think, maybe flow a little bit quicker. And make it a more viable tournament game. I thought it was pretty good as it was anyway, but they laced in a whole bunch of extra rules as well, which really makes sense in terms of setting up the tournament. And now we have elites. I mean, really what we're looking at by the time you add elites, the only thing we're really missing beyond that then is probably heavies and vehicles, isn't it? But where we are at, we're at a much rounded 40k skirmish game now than when Kill Team first came out. I know that Necromunda has a huge following and it is a game in its own right, but I would still love to see Kill Team Underhive, where you could take those Necromunda gangs into the Kill Team game, and it will be interesting to kind of see those two games. They're very, I accept they are very different. They play very differently, and they're about a different part of the universe. But I'd love to be able to, have, say, a Vanguard Kill Team sent in to assassinate a particularly unruly Hive gang leader. That's, to me, that would be great fun to see that crossover. So you never know, fingers crossed. But right now, elites for me, fantastic stuff. Let's just check up with the chat and see what people are saying about this. Well, David put the email out. I suspect that Slaanesh, Keeper of Secrets miniature, will be announced over the next 2 days, says Dave. So it's definitely going to happen over the next 2 days. I really hope so. Slaanesh is such a cool faction. Ralph has offered to join me at midnight tomorrow night to look out for that. So a Custodes kill team is basically a Custodes army. Well, you say that, but of course, in the realms of 40k now, the Custodes army is a hell of a lot more than 5 Custodes. With all the releases, the Jetbites, the Terminators, the Dreadnoughts. They are very much an army in their own right. I've just finished listening to audiobook. Can't remember the name of it now. I've mentioned it on one of the previous shows, of which talks all about the whole decision to send the Custodes forward, and how that decision was quite difficult, and you know, at the first rejected until the rift happened, and then of course, you know, a strong, swift changing of mind. I loved it. I bought into that. So I'm quite happy to see the Custodes out there marching around the universe, bopping things on their head. I do like Diphilus Maximus comment though. Okay, Blood Bowl. I've only ever played 4 games of Blood Bowl. I absolutely love it, but there's just so many games on the table right now. These things are insane. You know, at first I wasn't sure. Wasn't sure of the aesthetic of the halflings, but I suppose it's because I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and for me, hobbits were always a little bit more, you know, less like little tubby round barrels. But I have to say, if you get, you know, into the whole Warhammer fantasy thing, then these things are great fun, aren't they? Let's face it. The faces are incredible. The different character on each of the faces. There's something really, really unique about it. I strongly suspect as well that there are origins to those faces. I'm just not quite sure what those origins are, but I'd love to speak to the designer, because I guarantee at least 3 or 4 or 5 of these people are people he knows or she knows. Because, yeah, there's just too much character in these faces just to have been invented from scratch, I think. This guy is definitely somebody. I don't know who, but he's definitely somebody. And this guy too. I'm pretty convinced that might be peachy. Wait, hold on. If that theory hangs out, where's Duncan? He's got to be in there, hasn't he? Is that Duncan? That seems unfair. This as well, with the sort of squirrel forming almost a moustache. You know, like I say, I'd love to speak to the designer and find out if there's any truth in that at all. I strongly suspect, though, that's what it's about. Excuse me. And of course, there is mention, isn't there, that the Blood Bowl will be, you know, they're kind of reintroducing the difficult play. So I don't know a huge amount about that. I never really played Blood Bowl in the hard mode. I assume by hard they just mean, you know, do they actually just mean there is a mode, or do they just mean that hobbits are so dreadful, halflings are so dreadful, you're essentially having a really tough time if you're going up against, you know, any other team maybe. I'm not quite sure. Somebody with Blood Bowl knowledge, comment on whether hard mode is is a thing or not, or is it just a way of describing a faction that is difficult to win with, shall we say. And I can imagine the halflings can't be the best team on the table by any means, can they? Martin Dick says, halfling team, so much squishy cannon fodder. Diphilus Maximus says, look for the one wearing 2 thin coats. Genius. Let's get back in there. Yeah, I don't know. There's just too much character in those faces. This guy with the teeth. We need to walk around Games Workshop and, you know, with a teddy bear hanging out his front. We need to walk around and see if we can spot these people. But I swear they're probably around the office somewhere. Okay. Necromunda. For those who are big fans of the Cal Jericho and from Black Library, these 2 vagabonds, Scabs and Cal, just, yeah, great. I'm assuming these are resin models. The face on Scabs is just insane. Really, really done. Painted in a very interesting way with that coloration. So it's quite interesting to see almost kind of, you know, interpretation of facial colours rather than actually trying to be realistic, if you like. The sort of lighting that's hitting that. So definitely a step up on the painting of the models from the previous stuff that they stuffed up in the release schedule, where I thought the painting for those was pretty bad. This stuff's really, really beautiful. It's nice to see. I love the hazard stripes on the bottom of the guns. Fantastic. So yeah, more characters into Necromunda. Let's face it, with Necromunda getting more and more love, it's highly unlikely I'll ever see the Necromunda Hive gangs inside Kill Team, but you know, I'm just trying to avoid learning an entire new rule system because I'm lazy like that. Martin Dick says, yeah, you're correct. Factions can be harder. Halflings and goblins were classified as a lower tier team as it's possible but hard to win. Okay, so there you go. There wasn't actually a rule change or anything like that as far as horde mode was concerned then. It was just about how difficult the armies are to play. I haven't played much of the current edition of Blood Bowl, but I only won one game with my halfling team back in the day when a bunch of mates ran a league. Okay, so you're basically just saying I'm here to be fodder for every other faction then when you show up with a halfling team. And it does look like, it does make sense, doesn't it? You can hardly make halflings, you know, completely balanced, can you, against, you know, say the human faction or the orc faction? Because it's just, they would struggle. Okay, we've got a couple of other releases which we'll look at just very, very briefly. As you know, Shadowspear is up. If you want to see my unboxing, that's on the channel as well, so don't forget to pop along and have a look at that. I did sort of a mixture of a live show and a pre-recorded one, so there was a bit of unboxing and then into Q&A and stuff. I quite like that format, so I would like, if anybody's seen that video, to either pop along to the Facebook group and or just leave a comment on the video and let me know what you think to the format, because if you like it that way, I will probably continue to do them in that way. It was actually a bit more fun to do. And as much as I love creating content, it is easier to do when it's actually fun to do. So, you know, I enjoyed that. And the models inside Shadowspear are just insane. They're ridiculously beautiful. Okay. Before we move on, so that's pretty much what's going off in the news. There hasn't been much more. I mean, we've seen some nice Vigilus content. We, of course, are all anxiously counting down the days to see the Abaddon release. Please, 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 as soon as possible. There's some cool articles up on trade and currency in the Mortal Realms, if you haven't seen that. There's also, check that out, by the way, but there's also a really nice, see, this is why I'm thinking, you've got this whole gold stuff going off. Oh, man, look at that. What a great piece of artwork. Just angry Fireslayer dwarves. Oh, come on. Let's have some more Fireslayer models. Okay, before I get distracted by all of that, do check out Warhammer TV, because there was a couple of lore videos up fairly recently as well. Definitely worth checking out. I like the format, though. I had to watch it when you posted it, unfortunately, says David White. No problem, no problem. You know, it's one of those things. In the past, I've done it later in the day because thinking that's when the audience is around. But obviously, everybody's putting their stuff up at embargo, which is 11 o'clock, which meant, you know, essentially my content was penalised because, you know, everybody else had already been hit there and hitting the search ranking. So I definitely kind of need to release those, you know, the videos at 11 o'clock, but it was nice to kind of do that mixed format. I'm definitely going to do more, and now I've kind of bent my head around technically how to do that. I'll put a little bit more time into the pre-recorded sections as well. We were kind of even thinking of doing a little bit of a chat section, so that'll be good. What else is going off? They should be able to just run right past enemies and then get knocked down on a grass pitch. Bless them. Problem is they get injured even if you look at them funny. Off to bed, says Martin Dix. Good night. Fireslayers are just a replacement for those ancient dwarf berserkers. Oh, Dave, there's more to Fireslayers than that. I'm in Canada, haha. So watching time is weird. 5-hour delay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good point. Can't really expect you to get up at, you know, crack a clock in the morning. Any plans for a series of short Black Library review videos? No, but I might do at least audiobook reviews, because I do listen to the audiobooks constantly, and I even considered doing some things like podcast reviews, because I do, you know, I'm an avid listener of podcasts when I'm traveling in the car. So, and there's a couple of times, I'm sure there's podcasts out there that people may or may not be aware of. That's definitely worth checking out. So yeah, nice idea, nice idea. I shall add that to the list. What else is going off? Well, you know what, we've got 20 minutes left, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's on my desk. So I'm working on my Idoneth Deepkin. For those of you who don't know the format, we're going to a doubles tournament in June, end of June. Jack's exams will be done by then, so he will or won't have a place at university. We'll find that one out, so that depends on what mood he's in at the tournament. But you take 1,000 points each, 2,000 points in total. They stand as two separate factions because it's doubles. If you take the same factions, things like Norholes, Feculent Narmals, and Idoneth boats can't be doubled up, so you'd only get 2 across rather than 4. But if you take different factions, you can take your full account. So if Idoneth were to team up with Nurgle, you're seeing 3 of the Narmals and 2 of the boats, for instance. So, you know, it kind of encourages split factions, but at the same time, those terrain pieces don't really take things too much in one direction or another. And there are plenty. We've come up against plenty of players who essentially just kind of almost narratively come up with 2 aspects of the army, which is quite nice to see. You see one guy go horde, and the other lady go sort of heavy beastie and those kind of things, but all within the same faction. So someone takes the troops, someone takes the sort of monsters and those kind of things, and it works really nice. It's a really fun format. The games are fun. I think it's a little bit easier when there's a doubles, because, you know, if you forget something, there's a good chance your teammate will catch it. So if you've forgotten to, you know, use a command point or something like that, your teammate will turn to you and go, hey, don't forget to use this power, or don't forget to switch that on. And to be honest, the atmosphere at those double tournaments, of which David Ellis will no doubt agree to, the atmosphere is so friendly that half the time your opponent reminds you to do stuff. So I really like the doubles format. It's absolutely fantastic. You do get to meet wonderful people like David at the tournament, and it's a lot of fun. So this year we decided for the first year to specifically build our doubles army together. So the idea is when you lay them down on the table, they look like a cohesive army. And we decided the way to do that, myself and Jack is going to do Marathi and the Daughters of Cain, and I am going to do Volturnos and Idoneth Deepkin. So it's all about those 2 characters for us, Marathi and Volturnos. In the Idoneth Deepkin book and in the Daughters of Cain book, there are references to those 2 people striking deals with each other. Volturnos, as the King of Kings, does have an alliance with Marathi and kind of insists the rest of the kings follow along, but really it was his idea. So we really like that part of the story, and we were saying, well, how can we kind of build these 2 factions to look like they belong together? And we toyed with the idea of the paint schemes, but we didn't really want them to actually paint them the same, because then it would look like we're trying to make them look exactly like one army. It was, how do you kind of make them look like an allegiance? So I'm sticking with the classic sort of paint scheme, the blues and the whites and those kind of things. And Jack's, you know, done a variation of the Daughters scheme, but it's all reds, blacks and golds. Looking very, very cool. So we've got these reds and blues, which look really quite nice when you see them on the table together. So the thing that we're doing to unite the 2 armies is all about the basing. So in other words, we're going on the same basing scheme, and I'm 3D designing and printing the bases. The idea is the sort of Idoneth and the Daughters, we kind of saw it as advancing up the beach. So the Marathi and the Daughters of Cain, you'll see predominantly on sand with bits of water, little bits of rock pools and those kind of things, but predominantly the sand. And then as you get through the Idoneth ranks, you will see, you know, more water and less sand sort of thing, or at least pools of water and those kind of things. So, but the idea is that if you were to put them on a display board, they'd really link together. The big challenge we had was there's so many spare little fish and gribbles in the Idoneth Deepkin models. That was great. We could put fish and little things scattered around the Daughters of Cain book, so those little fish that scurry on with the Idoneth are swimming around the Daughters of Cain as they're running up the beach, if you like. But there's not a lot of spare terrain when it came to the Daughters of Cain. You know, they're jumping off little bits of terrain, and I've got some of those to put on my bases. So really it became, you know, a design key around the leaders, and I'll come on to visually where we're at because I'd like to share progress with you before the close of the show. I want to talk a little bit about my list at the moment because I'm really looking for feedback on this. We've got 1,000 points. I'm coming in at 940 at the moment, which gives me the extra command point. That's intentional. That command point at the moment sits there to one side for that turn where I absolutely need to save my thralls, and we'll come back to that later. So from a battle shock roll, that's what I'm talking about, but we'll come back to that. So leaders, we've got Volturnus, High King of the Deep, of course. That's the idea, to be led by that. I know that competitively probably most people would save the points and go for the Athelian King rather than the Volturnus, but as I've said, thematically this is about these two leaders forming an alliance. We wanted to represent that on the table. The Soul Render is in there, and I am going to be using, I think, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but the faction that gets me to add +3. So this is the Morfan, the faction that gets me to add +3 to the resurrection, basically. So that means, you know, every turn, and I think it's at the end of command, I think, maybe. So when he uses the Law Light ability, I think it is the end of the hero phase. I can return D3 thralls +3, the ability from the Morfan, and if he's been in combat, you know, 1 for each wound that I successfully did. So in theory, I could be returning 6 or 7 thralls to the unit if you know, we're in combat. There's some interesting things around that Soul Render. He's got a 2-inch range with his hook weapon, which means he can stand behind a nice rank of thralls, really, and do some damage. And if I'm up against the right opponent with, say, a 1-inch range on the weapons, he's pretty much safe from return attacks. But we'll see. Theory's always one thing. The reality of the game's a complete other, isn't it? So that's the idea, and that's why that extra command point comes into play, because, you know, if I'm down to, you know, 3 or 4 thralls, and I absolutely need them not to run away in battle shock, although I get re-roll of the battle shock due to the banner, I really like the idea of being able to shut that down and say, no, those guys are automatically passing battle shock this turn. So as soon as we go into my turn, I can bring, hopefully, 6 back, something like that. So if I'm down to 1, I'm still back up to a unit of 7, which is still a decent amount considering how much damage the thralls can do. So that's the theory around the Soul Renderer. Volturnus is kind of a bit of a powerhouse. He's got a bubble effect, but, you know, I'd say he's not the most competitive, but I really like the model. And then other than that, this is definitely something I can't decide on, whether 2 units of 3 Ishlan Guards or 1 unit of 6 Ishlan Guards, or 3 Ishlan Guards and 3 Morsar Guards. That's the kind of thing I'd love some feedback on, is where would you go with that? Because I, if you think about, I'm with Daughters of Cain, I'm choosing my units based on how to best complement the Daughters of Cain, as opposed to this is a standalone 1,000 point unit. And the Daughters of Cain are fast hitting, they die, the thing is they deal out so much damage, but simultaneously they die so quickly. So in theory what I need is units that will hang around for late game point gain, and that's why I'm thinking the save from the Ishlan Guard rather than the extra damage output from the Morsar Guard. Dishing damage out is going to be Jack's job. Surviving is going to be mine. That's what's going off in my mind about that save. So that's where I stand at the moment. I, like I say, really love to see your feedback. Before I move on to the models for the last 10 minutes of the show, let's just quickly catch up with the chat. We've got Furious George. Any plans? Oh, sorry, already done that one. David, I think we offered you a beer after our game by way of penance. Yeah, David kicked us so thoroughly round the block. You did indeed buy us a beer. And you know what? I accepted that beer as well. And that's 16 Warriors of Chaos and the Warshrine built, just a chariot to converted Lord of Demon mount, plus lots of rebasing, old stuff to go. Nice one, David. You just keep pumping out another army. Gonna have a quick look at how that faction is coming along anyway, and I hope that someone will give some feedback to it. Started off as a bunch of eels. Scrap that idea. The main thing I'm going to focus on right now and just talk about briefly is the theory behind Volturnus then. So The model for Volturnus is not you've got 3 builds for it essentially, 2 of them of which are a standard king. So if I was to go to, say, Games Workshop, I'm just going to bring up the standard model so you can kind of see what it looks like. This could have been a bad idea, but no, the internet's working beautifully. So there is Volturnus, and there is standard base. So as you can see, he's on the 60mm base. He's standing about 80mm tall, something like that. And of course, there is an alternate build for him somewhere in here where you can find the Athelian King. Give me a second, let's see if we can find it. There you go. So the Athelian King, of which there are 2 alternate builds as well. There's the big fan helmet, but you also have a choice of this one with this sort of spiky helmet and the sword. Both of which look very cool, by the way. I really like the models, and I'm tempted to get a 3rd one to do both builds of that, but it seems a bit extreme, really. What I'm trying to do is to make more out of the base. And again, what I'm want to bring across is this Morathi, this hint towards Morathi. It will all make sense as you go through. Ignore that this is just really crude green stuff work. There's blue tack all over this. It's hacked together. It's holding together. And I'm, this was at theory stage. Can I make, this deep beast sort of hang around a column like Morathi is wrapping around the column? So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm kind of sort of there, just taking photographic reference. As you can see, the blue tack, I'm taking photographic reference to kind of go, what kind of angle does it need to be at for him to be okay? To do this, by the way, I've taken him off his base. I've plastic welded the tails together. I'm going to say tails. I was going to say tentacles, but it's 3 tails. Plastic welded them, and I've removed detail from them because there's actually a little bit of basing material on the bottom of it that it stands up. And then I heated them up and straightened them out. So normally they're a bit tighter. So there's a bunch of work just getting it to this post stage at this point. This is a little bit further down the line. So what have I done? I've rotated the column 90 degrees. I tidied the join up, but at the same time, I kind of figured, why have the join facing forward? So I rotated the column 90 degrees. I put some wee beasties coming on it and loads of base detail down here. So there's some fish down here. There's a little manta ray eel coming out of here. And there's, excuse me, a stingray coming around the corner there, which you can just see. Unfortunately, the images, it's got black primer on at the moment. So, it's not showing up as clearly as I'd hoped. The other thing I did was, this guy starts off with, there you go, there's a good example. The claws are kind of out front, like, hey, check me out. I wanted it to kind of interact with the column more. So this is the most scary part of the conversion. I hacked its leg off and bent it down, which you can't see. This is just showing other little bits of detail that I want to add to the column. So I bent the leg down and had it pushing off the column. There's a little close-up of the detail of the base with the fish coming around and the little shells and stuff. I really like this because it gives me an opportunity to, even though it's only a 60mm base, it gives me an opportunity to do a nice little sort of display base for him. And as you can see now, this back leg is pushing off the top of the column. There's a bunch of work on it. This is just hacked off, a little bit of green stuff to secure it. I ran a pin down the center of that arm, and for those of you who haven't seen my little quick tip, I heated a pin up basically and just drove it straight down the arm, and then secured the pin on the inside, doused a bunch of super glue all over it, let it set, and then put green stuff in to secure it. So that's all that is at the moment, is a filler block. So here we are alongside Morathi, from a rather diminutive model to something I think will sit quite nice alongside the 2 leaders of the army. This is Jack's Morathi. It's still work in progress, by the way. You can see the little rock pools he's working on and those kind of things. But he's slowly getting there. That's a big model. It's taking some work, but he's getting there. So here you can see, my leader alongside him. You can imagine when he's on the base, he's coming literally to kind of head height, face to face with Morathi. So yeah, that's how it's looking. And I know the columns don't match exactly, and I did consider 3D printing a bunch of columns, and in fact I even worked on one so they matched exactly, and then I kind of figured I was overthinking it really. This column is actually 2 halves of a realm gate, cut, reversed, stuck together and filled. So if you're wondering where the column came from, it's actually the 2 uprights of one side of a realm gate, because obviously the realm gates don't actually match each other, so I had to take the left and right side, cut them and sandwich them together. Here I am working on just building up the muscles for the green stuff around the arm that I've positioned down. just getting that kind of pose look right. And then I decided I still wanted it to be, you know, significant compared to the original Athelian king. So I wanted to do something with the deep sea creature. Oh, right, here's my army list. There's the 20 thralls. Look, there's Volturnos and his component. I should have mentioned, actually, these are all component pieces. There's a metal rod running out the base there, so I can paint this separately. I can paint him separately. I can play the I can't remember the name of it, Deep Terror or something it's called. I really should know the name, shouldn't I, by now? But I can paint them all separately and then stick them all together. So with it being the centerpiece of the army, I wanted that option to be able to get in and paint all of these little details. For those of you who are wondering what I was talking about earlier around the Idoneth Deepkin detail, that is indeed the little treasure chest that we've seen on the recent rumour engine. So Deepkin? It's got to be. Deepkin endless spells? Maybe. Okay. And then I decided I really wanted this thing to have a little bit more presence. So I realized that in the spares box, basically, you get two opposing reversed out necks. So the difference between the Athelian king is the Athelian king looks to the left, and the Volturnos looks to the right. And what that basically gives you is two mirror image neck pieces down there. And of course, because I've built both versions, that meant I had both a left and a right spare neck piece. So I hacked the bottom half of these off, curved them around, separated them from the neck, and turned them into some funky little ears. I don't know whether I've made it too cute. I've kind of, you can see I've done some fill work there, but it's a bad photo. I've kind of filled it onto the head there. This thing doesn't actually have armor on its head, interestingly enough. It's, you know, it's just got a mouthpiece. And I have got to work out how I get the chains from here now underneath the ears, if you like. I've got to work that out yet, but that's for another day at the moment. I'm letting these things set properly before I start messing around attaching anything else to it, which has to be the biggest piece of advice from any green stuff work is just give it a day. The temptation is to keep building on top, but no, just give it a day, let it set properly, and then move on to your next job. So this arm now, it's just getting some file work just to really blend that edge in there. And I'm really quite pleased with how that leg is looking now. It wasn't brilliant to start with. I've definitely got some muscle texture in there. I'm pretty happy with it. So that is how my army is looking at the moment. If you connected to me on Facebook, pop along anyway, because you can go back through that image library yourself if you want. There's a whole bunch of images on there, actually, a whole bunch of nonsense to building Zone Mortalis and things like that. So if you've ever seen that stuff shown before, then you need to check out my Gene Stealer Cult Mind Mortalis table. That's always worth a good look around. So okay, where was I at? There you go. That's taken us pretty much to the hour. Like I say, would really love feedback from Idoneth Deepkin players out there on how you've seen those play. The problem is with building an army for a tournament, and this happens every time, although I've not got that many models to do. These things need to be done by June. And any time between the end of June and when the army is completed is the time I will get to test play them. And I know I could proxy them, say, with Fire Slayers and something else and try a couple of battles out, but it really, for some reason, I can't be motivated to do that. So I need to get them done so I can play test them and really start to understand the army a bit better. The problem is, of course, you know, if I've built those factions and then decide I want to add something else to it, then I've got the same problem of being able to paint more models as well. So feedback saves me all of that. Morsard or Ishlangard, for instance, is a big question mark. One unit of 6 or 2 units of 3. Normally, I'd stick numbers into a unit, but their leadership is pretty dreadful. So I kind of like the idea of 2 units of 3. That's the thinking behind that, by the way, because their leadership is so dreadful. I know it's hard to remove models, you know, but you know, when you've got 6 of them, you could lose 1 of them, and you could be at risk of losing more. That's the problem. If you had 9 of them and you went up against something that can really dish out damage, you could probably lose 2 in combat and another 2, another 2 just on a bad roll. So I know they can do some re-rolls and stuff, but the larger versus smaller unit, that's what's going through my head at the moment. Still not quite sure, but yes. Right, okay then. What have we got in here then? Ralph says, thanks for subscribing. Oh, thank you. Did I miss a subscription notification? The sound's off on my phone, so I do apologise. Thanks for subscribing, mate. Furious George, Phil spends more time on one model than I do on my entire army, which explains why my army looks like it's put together like a five. Look, it is the main model, in fairness. So, you know, just going back to what that model is, it's not only the leader of the 1,000 point tournament list, ultimately it's the leader of you know, my entire Deepkin army. So this is the High King. He deserves a little bit of attention, doesn't he? But hey, you know, the rest of the guys, they're just you know, built, ready for painting one day. If you like the show and the other content we provide, please like and subscribe, says Ralph. Thank you very much. And Ralph's punting the website as well. Do go along and check that out. I'm going to call it a night at that. It's 10 o'clock. It's late. I've got a lot to do. I've got a big day at work tomorrow. I'm into the last 2 working weeks of my notice. So things are getting busy right now. But I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much to everybody who joined me tonight. Absolutely brilliant to see you all along in the chat. And don't forget, help me out with Idoneth hints and tips, please. I will see you again. Well, it might actually be tomorrow night around about midnight. If I know Ralph volunteered himself, so why not? Why not a half-an-hour show? Evening, Rich. Rich just arrived saying great show. He may have been there all along, but that's his first comment. Good to see you, dude. Right, calling it a night. Night all. I've got to click over here.